Lovely students, welcome back to another exciting literature class. Today's class will be looking at a very interesting poem titled The Good Morrow by John Donne. The Good Morrow by John Donne. During the course of this wonderful lesson, we will be learning the background of the poet and the background of the poem. We're also going to be learning the summary and subject matter of the poem. We're also going to be understanding the poetic devices employed in the poem, as well as John Donne's use of imagery and symbolism in the poem. This is John Donne. This is John Donne. So obviously, if you're seeing the way John Donne is dressed and the way his haircut is as well as his mustache, you will definitely know that John Donne is not a man of the recent century. He is an ancient century poet. So we're going to be looking at a brief background of the poet. John Donne was born on the 22nd of January 1572 and died on the 31st of March 1631. He was an English poet and cleric in the Church of England. So definitely, if he was a cleric in the Church of England, majority of his poems would relate to religion. His poems will center around religion, things that have to do with religion, good and bad, things like that. So that will be the theme of his poems. In his early life, he was a Roman Catholic and later became an Anglican in 1615. He was appointed Dean of St. Paul Cathedral from 1621 until his death in 1631. He spent 3 years each at Oxford and Cambridge but could not obtain a degree because he was a Catholic. And then in 1601, he married Anne More, the niece of Sir Thomas Egerton, secretly. So this is the brief background of the poet John Donne. Now, we're going to be looking at the background of the poem itself. The Good Morrow is a celebration of love, which it presents as an intense and unparalleled pleasure. The poem shows us how love is. Love is an intense feeling. John Donne believes that love is an intense feeling and it should be unparalleled. It cannot be compared to anything. The Good Morrow is a poem by John Donne that was published in his 1633 collection, Songs and Sonnets. So the setting of the poem would obviously be in England and in 1633 during its publication. Now, we're going to be reading the poem, The Good Morrow by John Donne. I wonder by my troth what thou and I did till we loved. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly? Or snorted we in the seven sleepers' den? 'Twas so, but this all pleasures fancies be. If ever any beauty I did see, which I desired and got, 'twas but a dream of thee. And now, good morrow to our waking souls, which watch not one another out of fear. For love, all love of other sides controls, and makes one little room and everywhere. Let sea discoverers to new worlds have gone. Let maps to other worlds on worlds have shown. Let us possess one world, each hath one and is one. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest. Where can we find two better hemispheres? Without sharp north, without declining west. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two lovers be one, or thou and I, love so alike that none do slacken, none can die. Now, we're going to be analyzing our poem. Stanza 1. Stanza 1. The poet rejects his past life. We can see from the poem that John Donne is a lover and not just a poet. He's expressing his gratitude towards the life which he is currently spending. But alongside that, he's lamenting his past life. He believes that before falling in love, they both were leading a tasteless life. They were unaware of the beauty of life, and this was only possible if they had the power of love in their hands. They were unaware of the beauty of life. If they had the power of love, they would have understood the beauty of life. He sees that their past days of their lives were rustic and childish, as seen in the poem. You can see, but sucked on country pleasures childishly. The past days of their lives were rustic and childish. We even see John Donne quoting the 7 sleepers in stanza 1, quoting the 7 sleepers, or snorted we in the 7 sleepers den. The 7 sleepers story is an ancient myth that was mentioned in the Bible about 7 people that took shelter in a cave. They spent more than 200 years, but when they woke up, they did not realize the duration of their sleep. Thus, they could not understand what happened to them. So, the poet and his beloved, they've also spent a life like the 7 sleepers. They have no knowledge about life and love. They believe they were in a long sleep. So, John Donne is putting his life and the life of the sleepers in comparison. He's comparing his life with theirs, and he's not finding any difference between the two. He believes, I discovered love so late, which means I've been asleep and I'm just waking up to discover what love is. That's the same thing that happened with the 7 sleepers, sleeping for over 200 years and then just waking up to discover certain things that they did not know. So we can see that the Good Morrow stanza 1 is the scrutiny of the past life of the poet John Donne and his lover. In stanza 2, we're seeing the poet celebrating his present love life. We can see that there is a sharp contrast from the stanza 2. We can see that there is a sharp contrast between the word of love and the word of reality. John Donne is making us see that many people are attached to material things. Many people are attached to material things. They are attached to material things. But in Donne's eye, true happiness is not material things, but it lies with love. True happiness is love. We can also see that the poet has changed his thinking in stanza 2. He has changed his thinking in stanza 2. He believes that he has wasted his previous life. He wants to forget it completely. He sees that there is no more darkness in his life now that he has found love. So, if anything is present in his life, then that thing is love. Love is the thing that is present in his life. Now, let's move to the last stanza. Stanza 3. Stanza 3. Now you can see stanza 3. They both show a perfect sincerity and the synergy of both lovers. So we can see that while appreciating the beauty of the world, his own world, the poet also talks about unity. He talks about unity. His face shines in the eyes of his beloved. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears. We can see that his face is shining in the eyes of his beloved. The poet and his beloved have created a complete world from their love, but there is no possibility of decay in it. He has created a whole new world that is filled up with love. We can see that he is showing us that there is a connection between the two of them, and there is a perfect sincerity among the two of them to create a whole new world full of love. In the stanza 3 too, we can also see that the poet is telling us that the geographical world is temporary. We can see sharp north, declining west. They are temporary, but whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike, then none do slacking, none can die. So he's showing us that the temporary world can fade. It can fade, but the poet's world is eternal because their love is immortal and there is oneness, there is unity in their love. So we can see that the last stanza, the poet is making a clear analysis of equality and unity, the synergy of both lovers. We see that he loves without holding back. So he is connected to his lover. he is connected to his lover. So, if I want to analyze this whole poem, The Good Morrow, I would say that the poet is talking about the spirituality of love. He is talking about the spirituality of love. He is telling us that the poem, The Good Morrow, The Good Morrow, is telling us that love is superior to any other thing. Love is superior to any other thing. Love cannot be taken over by anything. Love is superior. And the high time we discover that love is superior, everybody would live in peace and unity. That is what the poet is trying to tell us in the poem, The Good Morrow. Now, let us look at the poetic devices in the poem. The poetic devices in the poem. Our first poetic device in this lovely poem is the language. You notice the type of language John Donne used. The poet uses archaic language during his time, the language of his own century, which is consistent with the 17th century. We were seeing words like troth, thou, thine, good morrow. These are words associated with the 17th century. Another poetic device we're going to be looking at. Now we'll be looking at the figures of speech in The Good Morrow. The figures of speech in The Good Morrow by John Donne. Our first figure of speech we're going to be looking at is allusion. Allusion of the legend of the seven sleepers is related to the Bible. This refers to the 7 Christians that were persecuted and were said to have slept for 200 years. The past lives of the two lovers are compared to the darkness of their sleep. Another figure of speech is rhetorical question. We saw a lot of rhetorical questions. Lines 1 to 2. And what thou and I did till we loved. Another figure of speech we saw was antithesis. The poet compares his past and present life, concluding that the present is more fruitful than the past. This can be seen in line 3. Line 3. We're also seeing the use of flashback. The poet made reference to the past lives of the lovers. All the 4 questions in stanza 1 compare their past lives to 7 sleepers and suckling infants, lines 2 to 4. Did till we loved, were we not weaned till then, 7 sleepers, then. All these are connected to their past life. Another figure of speech is dramatic monologue. The poet addresses his beloved and shows the presence of passive listener, just as in line 8, where he addresses himself and his lover's souls, wishing them a good morrow. The lover did not interrupt the discussion. What thou and I did till we loved. So it was like a conversation. They were interacting with each other. Now, another figure of speech we're going to be looking at is synecdoche. Synecdoche. The lovers represent each other as souls in lines 8, face, line 15, eye, line 15, hearts, line 16, loves in line 20. Evaluation. Comment on the poet's use of hyperbole and contrast in the poem. Comment on the poet's use of hyperbole and contrast in the poem. So we've come to the end of our lovely class on The Good Morrow by John Donne. In our next class, we're going to be looking at the themes in the poem The Good Morrow by John Donne. Until then, it's bye for now.